you. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So, as Hasna explained, I'm the general partner of a fund called Outliers Ventures, which is an early stage VC fund, so venture capital fund, that invests in tech startups across Africa and mainly in four main markets. Morocco, Egypt, Nigeria, and Kenya. I was asked to give you some insights and data about the venture capital industry in Africa. So I'll try to share with you what we've discovered, what we have learned in those past 3 years working on the ground. And you'll see that hopefully you will understand why we are so excited about Africa and why we believe that it's the next frontier to venture capital. So first, what's venture capital maybe? Venture capital is the fact of investing in early stage companies and giving them capital, so money, but not only money, but really advice and network and connection, so more than just money, to help them grow. And in exchange, the fund take equity, of course. And the idea is to make the company grow as fast as possible and as high as possible, and then at some point exit the company, so sell back the shares and make profit out of that. So it's an investment. So financial return is very important, but not only because the idea is to spot the next generation of successful companies that will transform an industry, and we believe that technology has the power to do that. So let me give you some knowledge about our fund, about Outliers, so who we are. So as I said, we invest in entrepreneurs that are leveraging technology, like they use technology to transform Africa's traditional economies. And we do that by focusing on key sectors and markets. So we invest in B2B, tech-enabled companies that are transforming key industries across the hottest markets in Africa. So B2B, business to business models, and not B2C, because we believe that Africa is not ready yet for B2C, because for two main reasons. So B2C is consumer, consumer with digital, of course, so technology enabled consumers, so e-commerce mainly, but not only. But because we believe that, because for two main reasons. First, the purchasing power of the population of the mass market is not there yet, and we don't have enough large population that have enough purchasing power, but also educated and have access to internet to be able to buy goods on the internet, so change their habit and have enough purchasing power to go for goods that are not necessary via the web. The other thing, the other main reason is also because the infrastructure layers that enable that are not ready yet. So mainly payment and logistics. So we see opportunities in investing more in payments and logistics to build those infrastructure layers in order to enable e-commerce. But we are convinced that in the next 5 to 10 years, e-commerce and B2C market in Africa will be booming. It's just about timing. So first, B2B. And secondly, we say tech-enabled. Why tech-enabled? What does that mean? It's any company that will use technology to transform, to solve a fundamental problem. So it doesn't have to be purely technical or purely technological, but just use technology in some ways to make it, to build a scalable business model. The other element is the sectors. So we are sector agnostic, but we see opportunities in the big, in some very key sectors that are in the backbone of our African economies. So of course it's fintech, insurtech, logistics and supply chain, health tech and agri-tech, and some others depending on the context. But those are really the main sectors where we found the most interesting opportunities. And then in terms of markets, so by starting, we decided to focus on really some key markets. At first, not to be only Morocco focused, because as entrepreneurs, we understand that the Moroccan market is not big enough to have a fund that is only investing in Morocco, to be able to find those those success stories. So we need to go where entrepreneurs are, and of course Morocco is an important market for us, but it's not the only one. And we see a lot of opportunities in markets like Egypt, that is one of the biggest one in terms of population, but also in terms of venture capital growth. You will see that later. I will share some numbers on that. And also Nigeria and Kenya, and the three of them are part of the top three ecosystems in Africa that attract the most VC funding. So in terms of investment strategy, so we invest pretty early, but always, so we call it seed and pre-Series A, so just before Series A. So those are the stages of fundraising for a company, for a startup. So it starts at idea stage, and then you have pre-seed, like where you have some kind of prototype, and then you have seed when there is a product on the market and some traction and some users, and this is where we come in. So you have some proof of the market, and then you have Series A, which is the scale that you start, like the company is starting to scale up, and we can invest just before that stage. So those are the main where we start, and we do ticket between 50K up to $500,000 as investment checks in those companies. And as I mentioned before, we are focused on 4 main markets, and we have one small percentage of the fund that we can invest in African diaspora founders anywhere in the world, because we believe that those entrepreneurs, those founders, they also don't have the same access to capital as their peers in the US or in Europe. And we see opportunities in backing them and helping them grow in more major markets. And then in terms of industries, as I was saying, so fintech and insurtech it will represent 40% of our portfolio, logistics and supply chain 30%, and agri-tech and health tech about 30% as well. So why Africa? Why do we believe that Africa is the next frontier to VC? Well, first, some data. So 70% of the population in Africa is less than 35 years old, which is a huge, so it makes it a huge potential market in the future for those next potential buyers, and who are more digital native and who will be able to start doing things on their phone. And not only as a consumer like B2C, but also B2B and B2B2C. So like think of all like the retailers or the corporates who will be more digital friendly and who will be able to use those tools better. So the fact that the population is young and growing very fast, so Africa has the continent where it's the fastest growing population, makes it a very interesting market to start a company and for venture capital. In terms of smartphone penetration, Africa has one of the fastest growing one as well, with 720 million smartphones in Africa in 2020, which is 3 times more than 2015, so huge growth as well. And then in terms of internet penetration, which is also growing fast, and more people have access to internet, whether on their phone or via Wi-Fi. So this is something that is gonna still grow in the future and where we see opportunities. So the tech revolution is really creating a huge opportunity at the intersection of digital and mobile, young population and fastest growing population in one part, and also traditional economies where there are still things to be reinvented and where there is a huge place for innovation. So this is reflected in how the venture capital industry has been growing very fast in the past few years. So starting from a very small amount in 2012, $42 million only for the whole continent of VC funding attracted by startups, to today $2 billion for 2019. Which is 5.5 times more than in 2016, just 3 years ago, where it was $366 million. So this number is growing at almost 2 times, is being multiplied by almost 2 times year after year. And we think that it's still gonna grow very, very fast in the next few years. Even with COVID, and actually this is an opportunity as well for the VC industry, because technology and digitalization is the big winner of what's happening, and we've seen the need of having a more digitalized economy in general. So how is this money, how is this capital distributed across the different ecosystems in Africa? Well, of course, it's not evenly distributed at all, and you have mainly 4 main markets that are attracting most of the capital. So 85% of the total capital is being attracted by Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. And Nigeria being the number one, with $747 million invested only in 2019, only in Nigeria. Kenya is the second one with 564 million. And then Egypt is now the third one, and Egypt was not on the top 3 at all in the past few years, and it grew very fast and almost now has grown bigger than South Africa, which has raised $205 million for their startups in 2019. So there were about 234 startups that has received funding for this in that year, and 37% of all the funding has been attracted by Nigeria only, which is huge. And then 41% of this funding has been invested in fintech companies, so in companies in the fintech sector, which is huge. So in terms of sector, speaking of fintech, that attracts the most part of the capital, you have other sectors that are also attracting investors' money, and also where companies are innovating. So you have off-grid tech, which is anything that is energy, but outside of the electricity network. So it's like solar panels that are giving power to other kind of devices, and so that create a network that is off-grid. So those kind of technologies has been picking up a lot. Enterprise, so anything that is B2B. So for example, building a software for a company to help companies do payments, pay their employees faster, easier, especially for SMEs. You have B2B software for companies to access to build credit scoring for their clients. So many kind of application for B2B. Then you have health, shared economies, but really, and it's hard to really segmentate the sectors, but what we've seen is really fintech is on top. And then you have anything that is B2B, could be any kind of sector. Then health is starting to be very important in Africa as well, because it's one of the sectors that needs transformation, and technology can help do that. So now in terms of companies that have raised those kind of capital, here is an example of those startups that have raised large rounds, and that attracted big investors, international investors like Goldman Sachs, Tencent, a Chinese company, IFC, and other big funds like Partech Ventures. So you have, for example, Andela, which is a company that is based in Nigeria and has reinvented how tech talent are being trained and remotely placed in big tech companies like Facebook or Google that need resources, that need developers, but they're struggling to find the good ones in the US, and it's a very competitive market, very expensive. So Andela is actually training Africans to become top developers and remotely place them in companies like Facebook or Google, and they become part of the employees, but from Nigeria. So this startup has raised $120 million in total in rounds of Series A, B, C, and D. And from investors like Mark Zuckerberg invested via his foundation, because it's very critical for his business, but also big funds like TLCom or Spark Capital. Then you have fintech companies like Paystack. Paystack is actually a payment gateway also from Nigeria, that is the equivalent of Stripe. I don't know if you're familiar with Stripe, but it enables any merchant online to set up a payment page, payment gateway, to enable the retailer to accept payment from his customers, and it gives a lot of tools to do that easily, and also to have all the data and the reporting on the sales. So it's been growing very fast, and they have raised money from Visa, from Stripe itself, and from other investors like Tencent and Y Combinator. Then another example in Egypt that is very interesting, it's called Swivel. So Swivel, what do? It's like the Uber for buses. So they are trying to solve public transport issues, and they started in Egypt. And so they have a fleet of small vehicles, and they of small buses, and you can book like a place on the app as you would do for Uber, but it's a collective public transportation. So they have raised also a lot of capital. They raised a 8 million Series A in 2018, and then a 30 million Series A in November 2018 as well, and then a 40 million Series B too. Well, it's like just the number, the names of the rounds. And so it's really growing fast, and they have also scaled to Kenya and other markets in Africa. I gave you another example of Twiga Food, the company in the middle from Kenya, who is actually reinventing how small farmers are selling to big buyers. So they've noticed that big buyers, they need like sometimes volumes and quality, but they can't work with small farmers because those small farmers don't have capacity to produce all the volume that they need. So what do? They sign contract with buyers, and then they will work with farmers and aggregate the produce and verify quality and do logistics so that they can serve the needs of the big buyers and enable the farmers to sell their product on the market at the best price. So it's a very interesting model that they've been doing, and they're also very going fast, and they've raised a lot of. The latest round was at $30 million, led by Goldman Sachs and by IFC. And then maybe the last example, it's Kobo 360, who is actually a marketplace for trucks starting in Nigeria. So they connect trucks owners with cargo owners. Like it's logistics for big companies that need to ship their goods. So they're creating an Uber marketplace for transporters and to connect with the industrial companies that need the help of transporters to ship products. And they've also raised a lot of money, and they're growing very fast. So those are examples of how technology can be used to transform very traditional sectors and industries, and where it can really grow fast and with the scalable business model. So now let me give you some examples, some more concrete examples of companies that we've invested in and that are also scaling fast. So far we've invested in 8 companies. One in Morocco, one in Egypt, and then one in Kenya, and then 3 in Nigeria, and then 1 in France, because we also do diaspora founders. And most of them are actually on the logistics and supply chain sector, because and fintech as well. So that reflects the opportunity that we've seen. And we are also very keen on the health tech sector. So let's focus on 2 companies, Makteb in Egypt and Sokowatch in Kenya. So those companies, what are they have a very similar business model, but they operate in 2 different markets. And we invested in both of them. And those companies have been really growing fast, and we've been very, very fascinated by their business model. So what do? It's actually transforming the FMCG supply chain. So what's happening is that 90% of the FMCG products sold are sold via small retailers, like, you know, in French, les épiciers. So this is the fact in Africa, that all the products will be sold via, 90% of the product will be sold via the informal network of small shops and not via big supermarkets. So the problem with that is that the small shops, sometimes they will go out of stock and they will need to wait for the big truck to come after like 2 weeks or after next month, and they will just be running out of stock and they won't be able to sell more, or they need to close their shop and go to the market to buy more product. At the same time, FMCG companies, they don't have visibility on this segment of the market, which is, even if it's the biggest segment for them, because they go through so many different intermediaries. So you have the wholesaler, and then you have the distributor, and then you have, and then at the end of the value chain, you get to the small retailer. So they have no idea on what the volume sold per area or per product. So what are those companies doing? They build an app where they enable those small retailers to order the product that they need via the app and get delivered the same day for free. How they do that is that they actually aggregate the orders and they use data to calculate the frequency of ordering, and they will buy from those big FMCG directly, and then they will ship the products to the small retailers the same day with small tuk-tuks that are more agile and then can go through the small streets and deliver the products on time. So this is this is a very, very interesting model that has been growing really fast. And for example, the company in Egypt, we invested in 2019, the first round. They've raised 750K for the pre-seed round. Then they raised another $6 million round in September the same year. And then recently during COVID, their activity was accelerated because, you know, food was a very important necessity in this period. So they've raised another $7 million round for pre-series A. And they grew from 10 employees when we invested to 500 employees in 12 months. So very, very huge growth. Same thing for Sokowatch. Sokowatch is actually started in Kenya, and they are serving the whole East African market, so Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda. And actually, they do exactly the same, and they've also raised more money, especially in this year to fuel their growth in East Africa and then West Africa. So now they are $40 million Series A was the last round. So this shows how data and technology can be used to really transform a very traditional industry, to make it more efficient and to create more opportunities. And now the next step for them is to introduce credit to those small retailers, because sometimes they need to buy more products, but they don't have enough money. So now with data, those startups are able to build like a credit scoring models for the small retailers, and they can give them small credits for them so that they can buy more products and sell more. So this is how data is being used in Africa. Another example, two other companies. So one called TwoFactor, which is in the logistics sector, and the other one called Headlane in the health tech industry. So TwoFactor is based in France, and one of the founders is Moroccan, so it's African diaspora. And what they do is actually they do last mile delivery. So last mile delivery, starting in Paris, they're also in Lyon and Toulouse. And what they do is that they also, think of the big shippers like DHL, GLS, and Chronopost. For them, they can ship the product to the city, so to a country, to a city, but then inside the city to get to the customers is very complicated for them, because they don't control costs, and they don't have any tech system that enables them to do it at cost, for the best cost. So what this startup is doing is that they aggregate orders in small warehouses during the day, And at night, because the other problem is that when goods are shipped to the customer, during the day, sometimes people are not at home and they miss the shipment. So the driver needs to come back, or they need to go and take it at the post office. So it's complicated. So what they do, actually, they aggregate the orders during the day at the right in the right area, and then they will ship. They leverage the bikers, the independent bikers like Uber model that work for restaurants to do the shipments, but in some hours they are free. So they leverage them to go and and ship, so do a round of all the deliveries that needs to be done for the client at night, so that they are at home and they can receive the shipment on time. So it's not B2B, it's B2B2C, because their clients actually DHL, GLS, and Chronopost, and they are integrated, technologically integrated with them. So each time DHL gets, packages in their home, in the post office, then the whole system for the last mile is done by TOSFactor. Another and last example is the health tech company called Healthlane that is actually that started in Cameroon and in Nigeria. And what they do is that they are trying to solve the problem of public hospitals' health services. So they've noticed that in public hospitals, the situation is very bad in Africa. The infrastructure is poor. The people have to go there and wait sometimes for 5 hours so that they can see a doctor. And even the service is not, the infrastructure is not there yet. So what they've done is that they have actually partnered with public hospitals, and they have taken a room in those hospitals it's like a premium service for people who don't want to go to the private doctors because it's expensive, but they are happy to pay a few more dollars to have a better service. So in this special room, they can take appointments via the app and come there and wait for 30 minutes instead of 5 minutes, and they have a doctor that sees them on a one-to-one and with a better equipment. So they're actually improving the capacity and services of public hospitals by plugging technology. And it's been also growing very fast. They work with more than 60 hospitals across Nigeria and Cameroon, and growing fast every month. So those are the examples of companies that we've invested in and that are using technology to transform core industries. So I'll finish by giving you a quick overview of the funding landscape in Morocco in terms of investment in startups. So it starts at idea stage. That's what I was describing earlier on the different funding stages. So starting at idea stage, you have few players working there, actually more. So this is a non-exhaustive representation, just to give an idea of an overview. So you have here La Factory, you have some other competitions that give some prizes and some funding. You have the pre-seed stage, where it's more business angels and incubator accelerators. Here you have Africa. Angel for Africa is also a network of business angels by La Factory. You have MOBAN, which is the Moroccan Business Angel Association. You have all the programs that are powered by CCG, so Caisse de dépôt de gestion. Yes, that's the CCG who started the Innovinvest initiative fund that partnered with incubators and accelerators to provide them with a small pocket of funding, which is a non-equity funding, just to help startup. So all the organisms that work with CCG would be in this stage, and then you have the seed stage. Sorry. So seed stage is where we are at. And at seed, it's tickets between 1 million dirhams and 5 million dirhams. And it's where, when startups have they have already a product on the market, and they have their first clients. So they will raise a small round of funding to start growing, and you have other players doing investing at that stage, like the founders by CDG. By CDG Invest. So it's a great program that invest between 1 to 3 million dirhams in startups, and they are now at their second batch. And you also have an initiative by Aqua Group, which is it's called 50 Sprints, and it's more focused on logistics and mobility, and they also invest up to $1 million dirhams. Then you have Series A and B, where you have other funds focused on this stage. So the 3 funds that were CCG invested, as well as a venture capital fund, SIF, Azure Partners, and Maroc Numeric Fund. So they would invest between $10 million dirhams and 20 million dirhams. Sometimes less, I think, for those funds. And then Series B is really late stage, where the company is already scaling in many markets and wanted to fuel the growth. And so there is a fund called Cathay Africa Invest. So it's a VC fund raised by Africa Invest in partnership with Cathay, which is a Chinese fund, that invests at that stage. So this is the overview of funding in Morocco. So only for Morocco, and it has, so this is much better than a few years ago, where there were very limited source of financing. So I hope that helps, and that gives you an overview of the venture capital industry. And I'm happy to answer your questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kenza. Thank you for your inspiring presentation. So the Q&A discussion is open. If you have any question, please feel free to ask it directly to the guest speaker or put it on the chat box. Thank you.
Hello, Kenza.
Hello, Nisreen.
How are you doing?
How are you?
Thank you very much for your presentation. So my question is about women entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Can we have some numbers related to the investment on startup owned by women entrepreneurs, and some data or numbers that you can have on the women entrepreneurship in Africa, if possible? And also, can you tell us if the gender has an impact on the choice of if you have special treatment for women entrepreneurs, or if there is or if the gender is having an impact on the ventures decision in Africa in general?
Yes, of course. So very good question. Thank you, Nisreen. So actually, as you can imagine, women still have more challenge to raise funding, and especially in the VC industry. So in terms of numbers, the numbers that we have for 2019 was 17% of funding rounds. So of this number, meaning rounds. So there was 71 rounds in 2019, and only 17% of this number have been going to companies founded by women. So it's still, I would say, on the lower end, but there is a lot of attention that is being given to this, and there are funds actually that are more women focused, or backing would be, whether in Africa or outside of Africa. There are some funds that will give priority, or at least would have a percentage of gender equality that they would want to reach. The challenge is that in Africa, it's still a nascent ecosystem. Well, would say an ecosystem that has started to grow, and it's hard to find the right companies. So you have to evaluate whether you want to go for a great deal because it's a great deal, or you want to go for a deal because it has been started by a woman founder. Well, I'll say both are important, and this is why we put attention ourselves to have at least at the end of our portfolio, we wish to reach at least 30% of companies that we have invested in that would be led by women, or at least have a woman in the management team. So that's very important, and this brings diversity, and also we have noticed that companies that are good and founded by women are, I mean, those women will be really will be really higher in the spectrum. So when there is a woman in place, generally she will outperform, and that's what we have seen. So I hope we can see more of that in the future.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My second question is regarding you as a venture in the African context. Are you facing some challenges regarding, like, for example, policies, or for the crowdfunding, for example, in Morocco, it's illegal. So for the ventures, what are the challenges that you are facing in African countries?
In terms of regulation, you mean, or?
Yes.
Well, it's really a case by case. But generally speaking, what happens is that for investors to be able to invest in different startups across Africa, they need some standard and some standardization. So, for example, what we have learned investing in the continent is that when a company needs to raise funding, investors ask them, or it's not automatic, it's like really like the standard and then really the recommended path to do it. The company has to open to incorporate outside of Africa in places that are used and well known by investors, like Delaware in the US, or Amsterdam in Europe, or Mauritius. So that it makes it easier to have different investors from different markets invest in the same company. Otherwise, it's too complicated to invest, to really understand the laws of each country and each market, and to build the necessary documentation designed for this specific market. So it's not PE, it's really VC, and it's like faster deals and smaller tickets, so it's not worth it financially and also in terms of just time and energy to do that. So that's why, to avoid all of that, all startups or African startups are actually that are raising money are incorporated outside of Africa, and this is crazy. This is crazy, and this is the number one thing that have really surprised us when we started. So I would say that. And then you have, of course, microeconomics for each market, especially with the crisis. So you need to pay attention to that. So basically that's the main issues. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Kenza. I think that Mohafed Abdel Jalil has a question.
Great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Mohafed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your valuable presentation. Well, my question is concerning this slide, which is displayed now, about the figures. I have some confusion about the figures, because I see for Morocco only $7 million and Tunisia $7 million. Why other countries? Sorry?
Yes.
And so other countries, there's a great gap between Morocco and other countries.
And thank you for this question. Yeah.
And my question is, what are the reasons, and what's the key elements that drive these figures to be high? My second question is concerning Morocco. You mentioned the stage for a startup or for a project. There is a pre-seed and a seed, which you call it the valley of death. Yes, right? So,
yes.
So please, I'd like to know what percentage of startup that reach only the value of this that cannot be implemented. Thank you very much.
Okay, great questions, and thanks for that. So I haven't shortened enough this great incredible gap actually between Morocco and other markets, and this is very important data to have so that in terms of understanding VC, it gives a good insights on what's happening. Unfortunately, there is 100 times more investment going to Nigeria in terms of startups and VC than to Morocco. And this is why is so. And you know what? And those numbers have been growing fast for Nigeria, Kenya, and other markets. But Morocco, we have always been around. We started at 3 million in 2016, and then 4 million in 2017, and now 7 million for 2019. So despite the efforts that are deployed, we still lack to see this growth happening. And why? Well, it's hard to tell, but there are definitely some key elements. So first, the market. We have a small market, and compared to Egypt or Nigeria, of course it doesn't help. So this is why we advise companies to really start in Morocco, but really go fast outside, because it's a need to be able to scale and grow. But in the same time, other markets like Kenya, they're not too far from us in terms of size of the market. But still, in Kenya, it's particular because they are very, very much innovative, and they have introduced innovative tools way before. So, for example, they have M-Pesa, which is the mobile payment tool that they had, that has been around for 10 years. So Kenya is the number one, as the first country to have started really mobile payment as it is, without internet and just paying via SMS. So it has been done. It's called M-Pesa, and it has been launched by Safaricom, which is a subsidiary of Vodacom, a big telco. So having M-Pesa enables startups to really build business models that reduce frictions in terms of payment. Because in other markets, and in Morocco, for example, we still have cash. And now they're trying to push mobile payment, but it's not there yet. It hopefully would come, but it's not. It didn't help to really build it's like an infrastructure layer on which startups can build innovative products. The other thing, and it's related to that, is about regulation. So Morocco it's one of the strongest economy in Africa, but also it's one of the most regulated one. We have a very strong banking market sector, as you know, and we have a lot of, for each thing that is a bit out of the known, it needs an agreement. An agreement en français, but in English it's like it needs to have like a regulation, and you need to go and have a license. So this really, we've seen that it put a lot of barriers for innovation to grow fast, because each time someone is trying to do something differently, the regulator will come and stop him, which is something that we don't see in Kenya. For example, in Kenya, we've met a lot of fintech companies, and that are doing something really, each time something very different and borderline for us. And we'll ask, like, do you have the right to do that legally? And they would say, actually, we have a letter from the central bank that says there is no law around that, but you're not banned to operate, so you can operate. So instead of saying no because there is no rule, there is no law, they say yes. So, and that changed everything. So that's one of the main reasons that I see. And then I'll say, I think the market itself, beyond the size, is the competitiveness of the market. So the Moroccan economy, it's much more concentrated, and there are few players that are leaders in their sectors that dominate the market. So it's hard for newcomers to really go and compete, or they will need to work with them as clients, but the sales process with big companies is very, very slow. Where in Nigeria or Kenya or Egypt, the market is more fragmented. So it's easier to go and, do business with small competitors and really play the competition side. So I'd say those are the main sectors that I see, and maybe the last thing is very important. It's unfortunate. It's the connections to francophone markets or anglophone markets. So you've seen that the ecosystems that are the most dynamic are the anglophone ones, and this has to do with two things: mindset and also connections. So in terms of mindset, the English word has been much more driven by entrepreneurship, and it's something that failure, it's something that has been part of the education, and is different here in the francophone markets. So trying new things, they're not afraid of doing that, even in the culture of the corporates itself. And then you have also the access to those markets, to like anglophone markets, and where, in the UK, in the US, there are more angel investors that have the experience of investing in their own market and that see opportunity in investing in other places. So they're less risk averse and more. So entrepreneurs in Nigeria, they maybe sometimes they study most of the time in the US or the UK, and they build relationships and they raise funding via those networks. So those are the main reasons that we have seen, and that where we can give some explanation. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. So now understood very well. So just second part, asked about the stage between pre-seed and seed, but you mentioned the value of this. How many, do you have any idea about the percentage of the projects that reached only value of this? And what are the main reasons? Thank you.
Yeah, well, we call value of debt really this place, this time between a company that has just started and that has a prototype, and until the company, and they're trying to sell to clients, they're trying to get users, and at that time it's really hard for them because they don't have enough working capital to hire people, and so. It's until they get to the stage where they are more attractive to investors and where they can raise funding. So this period, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'll say something between 70% to 80% of companies would die during this time, and then, but it depends. So the numbers are depending on the sector, on the geography, on. And what you consider as a startup, but a lot of companies won't go beyond this stage because they need to find a viable business model and they need to find a product market fit. So it's where the product that they have built answers the real need, and there are people that are willing to pay for it. And once they can get that and grow and generate enough revenue to fuel their growth and raise funding, they don't have to raise funding, but it's just to go faster. Well, then they're still challenging, but at least they are in a stage where it's more comfortable for them to grow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kenzal. Sorry for interrupting you. So I was. I don't think there is no more questions. I will check the chat box. No.
Great.
So I think that's all. Thank you for your insights, your great insights, and your presentation. I think it will be it is interesting for our students to know about all this VC, investments in Africa that you talked about. So it was very interesting, and thank you so much for being with us today. And maybe we will get a chance to meet each other once the campus will open. And thank you so much, Ms. Kenza.
Of course, it was my pleasure. And thank you for the invitation, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I see the thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.